I'm not listening, but I didn't hear what he's talking about.
Welcome back, online Sangha. Just a moment here, we're settling into the room. I hope you have a nice tea or coffee with you. We do here in the room. I will zoom in on our speaker in just a moment here after I give our introductions. We'd like to give a warm welcome to Stephen Parker. Stephen is a longtime Sangha member, both him and his family. Professionally, Steve is a licensed marriage and family therapist and former special education educator. This morning's talk, so glad to have you here and sharing with us Becoming Even Better a Parent. Thank you.
Thank you. You know, I do always joke and say everything I said, I've already said before. But this, you know, to talk about parenting, I think is something that I am really passionate about. I'm lucky enough to work with families across the life cycle. So parents who are expecting to become parents, with infants, grade school, middle school, high school, graduating, college, leaving home. So across the life cycle, and it really is a privilege for me to have been invited into thousands of families in the most intimate way. And as a result of all the work I've done with families, they've really helped me to have a terrific life. Because, you know, the idea of awakening in parenting, and to awaken to the profound impact that parents have, not just on their families, but I see how it impacts our society and our world. And my last talk I did here in June was really helping people to awaken to the idea that the struggles that I see in a larger culture, I see these struggles having their roots in the family. But trying to just focus this on parenting. The other thing I wanted to say is I really want to invite discussion. Initially, when I was invited to do this, I thought this was an ongoing circle and I was just going to come in and we can ask questions. And so I'm just going to throw out, to distill some of the learnings that I've learned over the years, some of the wisdoms that have been brought to me. I'm just going to put out a few here, and I think we can then begin to have more conversation about that. I thought what I would do is just read to you something I wrote yesterday, trying to describe my work, particularly with families and parenting. I help parents realize the profound part they play in shaping, sculpturing, creating the family experience. Conflict, struggle, peace, and harmony are formed by habitual interactional patterns that create the family culture. My work has been to awaken parents to the culture they're creating and to help them to create more of the culture they would say they want. And, you know, that is probably the most simplistic and yet most profound message, I think, is to really recognize it as parents. And I'm wondering how many people here are parents? Yeah. How many people have children under 40? No, I'm kidding. As I said to Pat and Mark this morning, they said, well, we're parents. And I said, well, all you're going to hear from my talk is all the mistakes you made. That's not true. They're wonderful parents. The key to this is really recognizing that the family is the seed of all communities. It's where we all begin. It is the first culture, the first society we live in. A family is a culture unto itself. And it's that kind of awakening that I think is so important to keep in mind, to be aware of, that you as the parent are shaping and creating this family experience. So here is what I would say. I was trying to think of what is the most profound teaching that I have learned and that I would wish to impart. It is also the simplest, I think I call it the simplest, most profound teaching. I have to be the person I want my children to be. It's not more complicated than that. I have to be the partner I want my partner to be. It's up to me to awaken, to taking, and here's the teaching that, and I would, we're going to certainly open this up. I welcome and encourage conversation. We only have like a 45-minute chat, and this is probably a weekend workshop, to say the least. So I'm going to throw things out. We're not going to be able to develop a lot of it, but I would tell you that if I was to identify the most important teaching that would help one to be more of the person, more of the parent that they would want their child to be, and that is, I have to accept 100% responsibility for how I feel, how I think, and how I behave. We probably all have been brought up and have done it ourselves where we've told our children, you make me so angry. You make me so disappointed. You make me so frustrated. You make me so happy. And you make me so proud. When you are telling your child that they are responsible for that, I hear all the time when parents say to their child, you don't want me to yell at you? Do your homework, pick up your toys, put the dishes in the sink. My yelling at you and my anger at you is not my responsibility. It's your responsibility. If you change, then I'll change. And this is so problematic. It is absolutely the most important piece. If I am not taking responsibility for my behavior, my emotions, I'm not blaming you for making me unhappy. When we do that, we are also teaching children that they are not responsible for how they feel, think, and react. So you'll hear a little brother say, well, my sister, she really pissed me off. My sister made me angry. And where do they learn that? They learn that because of how parents respond to that. So it is probably the most profound teaching is to awaken as parents to accept that 100% responsibility so that you start teaching your children to start taking responsibility. And yet we do have a lot of reactivity that goes on in families. I did want to read a quote that I really liked about this idea of accepting full responsibility. Your defining act of love for your child will not be the 2 a.m. feedings, the sleepless night spent beside your child in the hospital, or the second job you took to pay for college. Your zenith will occur in the face of a withering blast of frightening rage from your child and allowing no rage from yourself in response. It's so key. We have to shift from being this emotionally reactive, primal animal and start to recognize that we need to begin to start teaching principles. We need to become principle-based. I'm going to say a little bit more about that. I just wanted to throw out a couple of key awarenesses here. One is to begin to view that all of your children's behavior is a revealing of a life lesson that they need to learn. Think about that. Any behavior that they demonstrate, if you think of that as, oh, so what's the life lesson I would wish for them to learn here? I will always say that parents really do want what's best for their kids. They really do want to teach them very valuable life lessons. The problem isn't the lessons that they want to teach. The problem is the lesson plan they use to teach it. And I think that's where the awakening has to come. Because I can tell you that your wisdom will never be taught to your children when it's delivered in temperament. Anger, I always say, culturally, anger, blame, shame, intimidation, threat, humiliation, guilt, and even physical punishment have all been legitimized ways of trying to motivate, change your kid, teach them behavior. Shame-based, anger-based. You teach people to be afraid of you maybe, but you're not teaching them to start accepting responsibility for themselves. Let me go back to the notion of teaching principles, not behavior. When you become much more of a principle-based person, meaning that I learn how to interrupt my surges of emotion by stopping and then choosing a response that is rooted in kindness and respect, is rooted in the awareness that how am I teaching my child to deal with disappointment, with frustration, with anger? How am I modeling that for my child? It requires the ability to stop and then choose a response. The difference between an emotional reaction and a principle-based response is that a response has reflection, a reaction has none. A response recognizes choices and options, an emotional reaction does not. And it is living with that intention. I encourage clients all the time, have that sign on the mirror in the bathroom that says, be a responder, not a reactor, or something to keep focusing your attention on being grounded in doing that. Well, let me just throw this out right now. Are there any questions, any thoughts about what I'm saying so far? Yes.
You talk about responding versus reacting.
You mentioned responding versus reacting emotionally.
Yes.
So you're gonna have that emotional reaction, so is there no place for that, or like you always want to hide that if it's negative? Or
It's a great question. And people say, oh, what, so I'm never supposed to get angry? Absolutely not. You will get angry. The key to this is, I call it creating an emotional circuit breaker. I feel the surge, and I know what's about to come out of my mouth is, I'm not going to want that reaction on YouTube for everyone to see. I know that. I feel that surge. And so in the same way, if inviting your demons to tea, I know that this surge of anger that is about to explode out of my mouth always leaves me feeling terrible, always is ineffective. I feel worse. And I see the terror in my child's eye. I throw the emotional circuit breaker. I have said things like, I cannot respond right now. I'm feeling so much anger and so much reactivity. I'll get back to you. Build in a pause. The ability to stop is one of the most important skills you can develop, the ability to stop. And that's how you make friends with your emotional reactivity, so to speak. I call it turning your demon into your ally. So the surge is there, and then I say, oh, yep, thanks for reminding me. This is when I want to be kinder and more respectful. So it is a very awareness-based approach to parenting. You have to be aware. And I think that's one of the most important pieces to recognize. If we are unconscious, the piece that I always say is we're influencing our children either consciously or unconsciously. We're either influencing them in the ways we would say we want, or we're influencing them in ways we would say we don't want. And if you become aware of that, you then have options and choices of how you want to respond to your child, and to be much more aware that this is creating our family culture. It's a family culture in which we know how to be angry respectfully. It's also, I don't blame you for the anger, as I said before. I find myself very angry when you leave your things around. I just want you to know that it does, and that's why I'm gonna get to teaching principles and not behavior now. So we'll say to our children, pick up your toys, put your things away, do your homework. We teach behavior. We're not teaching principles. I'm not going to sit there and tell my children to pick up their toys. What I'm going to say is, oh, I see you need to learn something about consideration. to be aware that other people use this space. And when you leave your toys in the middle of the floor, other people can step on it, trip on that. And so let me teach you what consideration is. I'm not going to sit there and tell my kid, do your homework. I'm going to say, oh, I see we need to teach you something about accepting responsibility for your own successes. And so you look for ways of taking what would be behavioral teachings, but think of the principles so that you're not sitting there over and over again telling them to do the same things, you know, pick this up, do this, do that. It's become this, become that. Mark.
Steve, I like your ideas about principle. Let me take another sort of a sidebar look at that. And what about behaviors? So instead of we have two grandsons, 7 and 3. The 7-year-old goes to a school where they are doing project work that I don't think I did till high school. I'm quite serious about this. And it's easy for me to say to him, okay, Braden, where are you on your project? But it's also possible for me to say, look at this project I'm doing, by the way. I know you're doing a project. Look at this project I'm doing, and here's how I'm doing it, just by the by. Or another much more simple-minded version of that is we always put our shoes here in the closet this way. We just don't throw them out. You throw them in. So what do you think about behavior versus principles?
Well, I mean, the behavior, I think, reveals the principle that you want to teach. You know, I mean, if the value in our home is that things are neat in a closet, then I'm going to attach that to it being respectful to those in our home, that we're respecting the attitude and desires of the members of the family. It's still not straighten your shoes out. It is, oh, we want, in our home, this is important to us, and to be respectful to the values of our home. So you're amplifying that. The other thing, certainly about teaching principles, is principles have to be taught in action. Basically, parents are teaching principles reactively. It isn't a proactive approach. The proactive approach is when my kid is in the car and I pull up to a stop sign and I let someone through and I turn to my child and I say, when I let that person through, that's an example of being kind. When I was on the grocery line and I had, a person had one item and I had a whole basket and I said, oh, please, you go ahead. I turn to my child and I say, that's me being considerate and respectful to somebody. That's being compassionate for somebody. That principles have to be demonstrated in the actions the parent is taking. Telling a kid to be respectful means nothing. Be good, be nice. These mean nothing. Children do not learn by what they're told, they only learn by what they experience. Do as I say, not as I do is one of the worst cultural narratives that have been handed down. We want it to be do as I do. And that makes children are our teachers. I mean, that's an important acceptance. I would say that I'm a much better person because of having been a father in many ways. And also having been married to Ruth, I got to add that in there. Oh, yeah. I was nothing until I met her. No. But the truth is, that's the kind of awareness I have to be awake and aware to. What am I teaching? The other things is, how do we teach our children to become, oh, you have a question?
Oh yeah, I was just gonna, sorry, I know you're about to pick up a new tangent, but I wanna say I love this idea of just like reaction, responsiveness and not reaction. And I feel like my children are at an age where I no longer can tell them even if I wanted to do your homework, it's not happening at this age. And I wanted you to speak to a little bit about needs awareness. I find that that's what is helping me do that circuit breaker. So when I feel the frustration, I can say, oh, I'm having a need right now, or like, I have a need for clarity and I'm confused right now. I'm gonna take a minute, or something like that. Can you speak a little bit of how the needs awareness ties into this?
And when you say needs awareness, what do you say? Your need?
Yeah, like my need,
Okay.
or even helping a child recognize when they're getting irritable. My child may not always understand that was sharp or quick, or that landed on me in a way, and that there maybe is a need they're having that they don't understand yet either.
Okay. I'll approach this, maybe it answers some of the, one of the things that I think is really important is for parents to recognize what their need is versus what's the teaching for the child. So this is an example of where parents wind up taking over the notion of success for their child. I mean, the number of parents I know who have written papers for their kids or done projects for their kids, that I have to recognize, I need my kid to do their homework. Okay, well, that's not going to be helpful, because as you just described, parenting shifts when they're very young, where you do have control. You can put them in a car seat when they don't want to go. But then parenting has to shift from control to influence. And that's the art of influencing your children. And how to, okay, I have a need, I'm seeing my kids screwing off, not doing their work. If I develop a relationship with my child in which I really bestow upon them the importance of them discovering their own desire for success. And I think that's been a big problem, is that parents take over the notion of success, and that child then is either making that parent happy or not. They're either pleasers or disappointers. And what's not being taught is helping a child develop their own desire for success. So if a kid comes home with a poor grade, my first response is, what's that for you? What does that mean to you? Instead of, don't you ever come home with this again. TV's gone, and the punishment. It's like, no, I want to understand what that means for you, and what's the learning in failure. I think, that's one of the other pieces that I think is really important. We try to prevent our children, we try to rescue our children from their emotions, from their sadness, their anger, their unhappiness, and we're doing them no favors. We're not teaching them to find within themselves the resilience, the strength, the ability to deal with life's challenges. You're not helping them when you try to comfort them all the time. The question is how to be a compassionate presence while encouraging them to discover their own resilience, their own abilities. We underestimate the ability of children greatly. Children are capable of so much more. My joke always is, we may not let our child boil water on the stove, but we will entrust them with our emotional well-being. Which is, really, it's interesting, isn't it? Children are much more capable. And this was what I was going to say. One of the things I see greatly missing in families is, how do we teach young children, like 3-year-olds, that they are important contributing members of the family? And in other examples, I've said, when the 3-year-old puts spoons around the table, and then when we're sitting at dinner, we make a toast to our child because we all got a spoon. By the time they're teenagers and they're taking out the garbage, and they're not taking out the garbage because you told them to take out the garbage. They take out the garbage because they have been made to feel like they are important contributing members of the family. They are accepted, acknowledged, valued, validated, appreciated for their contributions. And that adversarial struggle between parents telling kids, put their dishes away, clean this up, is not there, because they have ownership of the home. And that starts at a young age. And I think we miss that opportunity. I see it missed greatly, to help children recognize. Parents will say, do me a favor, put this away. No, you're not doing me a favor. You're taking care of the family when you get the garbage out. Okay, I think I'm beating the dead horse here, but, okay, so I did the rescuing. The idea here, let's see, I do want to open this up now. I'm just getting to maybe one of my last points that I wanted to make, and then open this up for more conversation. Clearly, with 45 years of experience, I could use your help drawing for me what it is you might want to know. I could just read one last quote. Your kid is not an accomplished professional. She or he is an amateur. If you want the thrill of watching someone develop into a fine human being while screwing up a lot, become a parent. So let's open some of this up for some questions. Yes?
Okay, thank you very much. I just wanted to dig in more to work practicing on the non-reactivity and remaining calm, because that really resonated with me with this, what you said about the most important or the best moments of when you can remain calm when your child is expressing rage at you. Because I'm at a stage with young children just where they have extreme emotions. And one of them has very intense kind of meltdowns regularly, where they're sort of provoking us as well. So I've been trying very much, and I realize this is sort of a question specific to where I am at. But
I can charge you, right?
yes, exactly. You bill me after it. So it's just maybe I'm trying to dig deeper for more okay, how can I not respond to something that is intended to when someone's hitting you, when someone's crossing these boundaries too, and I'm trying to also not always in the moment address it, but practice mindfulness and really try to not react, but sometimes it's just impossible. And so that is it's one of the biggest spiritual challenges of my life, actually. What to do in those moments and how not to lose control.
Well, welcome to parenting.
Yeah.
And first of all, there's just one piece in the language. And my child is provoking me. Your child isn't provoking you. You're finding yourself provoked by your child. I know that sounds like semantics, but it is a big switch. Your child isn't doing this to me. I'm finding myself provoked. And so if I am wanting to be rooted in being kind and respectful, and yet, people can't be hit in the family, then in as kind and loving way as possible, I'm going to say, I see you need for me to help you find a way to control your upset right now. Hitting people in our family isn't something that can happen. Do you need, and here's where choice language comes in. Do you need for you and I to go into your room to calm down? Would you like to sit on a chair by yourself and find a way to calm down? What do you think might be helpful now? Now, I get it. When a kid is in a full-blown tantrum, they might still be screaming. And one of the things that I have helped people to say, I see you're asking something from me, and I'm trying to understand that right now. I hear you screaming, I hear how angry you are, and let's find ways to bring that down. Maybe we teach them some breathing exercises. The point is, parents become mirrors of their children's behavior. And when that happens, you then become scary. And then what winds up being taught in the family is, until mommy and daddy are yelling and screaming, I can keep doing what I'm doing. One of the stories I always tell is that, the kid's watching TV, parents call the kid for the TV to come to dinner, and the kid says, I'll be there. And then the parent calls 5 minutes later and says, come on, it's time for dinner. We're coming. And then after about 10 minutes, the parent goes in, shuts off the TV and says, get your asses down to dinner. And what that child learned is that when they get called for dinner, they have 10 more minutes of TV. Until there's the anger expressed. And you want to be aware, because people will say, when I yell and scream and become threatening, it works. Well, if it worked, you'd only do it once. It doesn't work. And what winds up happening is that, think of this, children thrive on intensity, especially young children. Forget the positive or negative aspect, intensity. And when a child gets that, can provoke a parent into that high intensity reactivity, parents inadvertently wind up encouraging the very behaviors they're trying to extinguish. And so it's really, really important to recognize, I always say that parents keep using the same strategies over and over again that don't work, except more frequently and louder. But they don't work. And I think part of this is recognizing and stopping, even saying in front of your child, you know, this is when I usually yell at you. I don't want to do that anymore. I might sit down on the floor in front of a little kid. I may lay down on the floor. I've changed the whole atmosphere. And I'm sitting there going, I'm trying to figure out how can I show you that you can control your anger right now, boy, and roll around on the floor. I mean, anything is out of the box thinking can absolutely disrupt the familiar patterns. There's no question that conscious, intentional parenting takes more energy. A yell and a scream is quick. But being conscious and intentional to what I am teaching, that requires me to be aware. It requires me to separate from my primal instincts of wanting to shut this kid up. But I don't behave that way. And remember, everything we're talking about is most of the time. This is not a perfectionistic model. You know, but you want to strive for most of the time, and you also want to make sure that you are practicing self-compassion, because being a conscious, intentional parent is an ongoing creative process, and it's really important that you're not beating yourselves up. But it is the parent taking 100% responsibility for their emotional well-being. It is not in the hands of the child, as it so often is in our culture. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Yeah, right here in the room, and then online, feel free to unmute yourself after this one.
I don't have any children. However, I did, for a number of years, I lived in a group home, myself and 2 other adults, with 8 handicapped children. It was, what do they call it now? It was the IDD community, which is intellectually developmentally disabled. That's the politically correct term, I think. Well, there were 8 of them. And they were children who had, for the most part, been raised in institutions. And so they were raised by 3 shifts of people, and a lot of negative comments. And when you're working with handicapped children, there's lots of opportunities for negative comments. And a couple of them had some behavior problems. And we were given this training program before we started, and by this gentleman, I don't remember his name, but he worked at Boys Town in Nebraska, mostly with teenagers, I think. But he said, one thing that's good for almost self-awareness, he said, for children, he said, it's important that for every negative comment you make, you must make at least 10 positive ones. And he said, I suggest you write them down. So some people were like, I was like, I mean, I didn't write them down, but I did a checklist, you know? So for every negative comment, I had to make 10 positive ones. And it was amazing how easy it is to fall into that negative category,
Yeah, right.
Especially when we realize all of a sudden I got to do 10. I'm running out of time here. You know, it's 10 minutes to bedtime. Yeah, well, good job putting on your pajamas. Good job brushing your teeth. Anything to get my count up.
That's great.
But it was interesting in terms of self-awareness. You don't realize how often you make negative comments.
Well, the negative comments often get the biggest emotion and intensity. One of the things, based on what you're saying, is I'm always encouraging parents to catch their kids doing something right.
Yes.
And, you know, and when I was principal of a day treatment center for kids, we had nights when families came in, and some were foster parents, it didn't, you know, whatever it was, and we did role plays. And the role plays where we created situations in which people were angry at each other, everyone got an Academy Award. They were intense, exciting, just charged struggles. And then when it was about acknowledging or celebrating something that was good, it was boring. It was so boring. It was like, oh, nice job. Oh, that's great. Oh, terrific. It was so boring. And if you think about it, we charge the most negative interactions with our kids, and then we wonder, why does that keep happening? It happens in marriages too. Sometimes the most passionate thing in a marriage is their fights. And it's a way of having passion. Being alive can be in the struggle. And I think we want to change that. Celebrate big, acknowledge big. Look for that opportunity. Yes, I think someone else had a...
Yeah, online. Feel free to unmute yourself. Was there a hand raised?
No? Okay.
No? Okay. Oh, we got one here in the room. Hold on.
So I'm curious about the rescuing notion. So I think as a parent, one of the things that I struggle with the most is rescuing. And so like I'm a mathematician, my son has math homework, and it's always last minute, 10:30, hey, I didn't pay attention, I don't know this, I've got a test tomorrow, and I find myself in this like rescue mode where, okay, I will stay up till 11:30, 12, and like I think the problem is like I'll feel good after I do it, like, oh, like I helped him, I'm doing my job as a parent, but I'm not, it happens over and over and over, right? So I'm not teaching him the right lesson, I'm not teaching them the self-responsibility, but I have a hard time disrupting this notion of like, they have a need and I immediately have to like solve for it.
Right. One of the things, so it's going to keep going on like that.
Yeah.
Because, it's actually mutually beneficial. Your kid gets the work done, he's had time with his dad, and dad feels great that he had a chance to help his child, his son. On one level, beautiful. On the other level, if you say to your child, it's late at night, you're asking me to help you with your homework, let's talk about what you're going to do next time so that you'll be more prepared. And come up with an action plan for him to start addressing his work earlier. And then when he doesn't, you're able to say, I'm available to help you when you have already done this, and that. But calling me late at night isn't the time that I'm going to be available for you anymore, because it's not teaching you how to become responsible for your own success. And I think it's just a sort of a shifting. Like, so what's the lesson here? My kid's not planning ahead. My kid's not anticipating what's before him. Okay, how do I teach my child to prepare more and to want that? But the dynamics in a family, I mean, that's a very loving act. And I'm sure he feels great when you sit with him and show him attention, and that's beautiful. But maybe you want to do that at 7 p.m. instead of 9 p.m. after he's already given it some attempts. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. Nobody? Yes.
Oh, yeah, over here. Pat, over here. Here comes the mic.
Well, I don't have young children, obviously, but I do have young grandchildren, and I have children who are parents.
Right.
And that is a sticky situation. And so can you comment on that a little bit? How
Stay out of it. Ruth always said that it was my son Teddy is married, Ruth always said, it's very important that the woman that marries Teddy, my son, really loves him, but it's much more important that she loves me. I'll tell you, the number of families I see in which people in your shoes, having grandchildren, sticking their 2 cents in on how their children should parent is an absolute formula for disaster, of becoming isolated, kept out. It also sets up your child and their spouse he's got to choose between an alliance with his parents or an alliance with his wife. Divided loyalties can develop in that. And it really is something that you want to be aware of and not just jump in. Now, there are strategic ways to say, God, I was noticing when your kid is blah, 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 You know, how did you guys come to that as an intervention with that? I just so curious about that. Curiosity, let me just say this piece, and this is true across the board. Curiosity without judgment. And I think that is a key position of really being curious, where you really want to know. Somebody's angry with me, and I am curious. I might say, help me understand what is it that I'm doing that's contributing to this anger. Instead of, you have no business being angry at me, judgment, your anger. You know, remember, when people feel that they've been wrongly accused or misrepresented, when they're told how they feel, how they think and behave, you're gonna get a rebuttal. You're gonna get a battle. I mean, I've had couples in my office where someone is saying, you're so angry, and the other person is screaming, I'm not angry, I'm frustrated. It's gonna get a rebuttal. And so you wanna be aware that you're not using accusatory language. And that's just something to keep in mind. But I know, Pat, it's hard when you are watching your children making choices and decisions with grandchildren that are very different than yours. And, you know, in some ways, it's you gotta.
Wrong, she said, yeah.
What's that?
And wrong, she said. I'm sharing that with our online Sangha there, yeah.
Yeah, it's different. And again, if there's a way to be curious about it, you know, we can say something. I know we're running out of time here. Okay.
I know we're running out of time. This is just a slightly different shift. Someone was recounting a story that I observed. I observed them telling the story. The story was that this person's most important memory of his grandfather was that his grandfather regularly took him in his face in his hands and said to him, you are special. You are special. And I thought to myself, I wish I had done that with my children. You know, they know I love them. They know I tried my best. But I didn't do that very little extra thing. And I wonder how often, if we did that more often, that kind of thing, how it would disrupt all the other negative things.
Well, feeling loved and appreciated, you know, respected, you know, appreciated. I mean, these are the principles, you know. And I said, and I say in every talk, respect is probably in any relationship in which there's something positive thought of. People feel positive about a relationship. Respect is always present. In any relationship that's conflictual, respect is gone. And respect is a primal need. Respect goes back to the earliest of humans. To be respected meant you were accepted. If you were accepted, you could belong to the tribe and you would survive. If you were not respected, you were not accepted, you could not belong to the tribe and you would wander alone and die. And I see so much of the conflict in our society, in our culture, is rooted in people are not feeling respected by each other. We dehumanize the other, and that kind of thing. And that's why I think it's really important that we recognize that the family is the seed of all communities. And in my last talk, it was to create enough momentum at the family level that will begin to affect our culture and change it. So I think that's probably it for today.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other comments online or questions in the room here? Yeah, one more? Okay. Well, we got another minute or two here. Let's.
When you say about like principles, do you have any just like guidelines or outlines of like different principles that are like effective, or, you know, like do you have like a set of like 5 principles that you find that like are really helpful in kind of structuring conversations? Because sometimes I love the idea, but sometimes I'm not sure like what principle, if like you said, if like they're not putting their shoes away, like what principle do I like fall back on?
Right. Well, you know, I mean, first of all, I bet you can make a list.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, there is something so I always say it's simplistic. May not be simple to do, but it's simplistic. Kindness, love, respect, appreciation, gratitude, compassion, generosity, the ability to be flexible. Those are just off the top of my head, but I'm sure we can, but don't make it too big a list. Just act with kindness and respect, and express gratitude and appreciation. I mean, I think that's, that'll be a lot, to just look for the opportunity each day to begin to express that and to model it. What we model for our children is what our children become. I always say that we often yell at our children for things we never taught them. And so I got to be so aware and awake of what I'm teaching my children and what is the family culture I am creating. My kids are not creating it. I and my partner, or if you have a partner, we are creating it. Is this the creation we say we want? And I hope that people will say, well, I love this about our family, I love that about our family, but we could really improve here, right? Well, thank you, everybody.
Carlene had one online here.
Question?
Go ahead,
Yes,
Carlene.
please.
Yeah, Stephen, I just wanted to express a lot of gratitude. Pretty much, I mean, everything that you talked about just struck so close to home for myself and for my husband and I in our parenting journey. We have 2 young adults at 20 and 22 and have had numerous pretty big challenges. And the truth of the things that you're saying just really rang loud and clear. So just a lot of gratitude. I would love at some point to have more conversation with you.
Beautiful, thank you.
But thank you very, very much.
Thank you, thanks.
Stephen, we have a grandchild, a 8-year-old coming to spend overnight with us shortly, and he is very special and different. And so it's really a great opportunity to practice, what you've been talking about. I deeply appreciate it. I always love listening to you, and what else I was going to say.
She wants me to write a book.
Yes.
No, let me change. She wants me to want to write a book.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, everyone. Please enjoy your Sunday. Have a lovely day. Those of you here in person, if you're able, please join us for some snacks and fellowship for Kinship Hour. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you. Okay, so I have my, oh, thanks. I was just gonna keep playing this music. Thanks.
Yeah, of course.
I would appreciate